I've got a bad feeling about this review. I think it's going to be a very long one.
What's up? It's Film Frenzy, and there's a lot to talk about today with Star Wars Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker, the final film in the 9-episode Skywalker saga. Let's get right into this with my first category of discussion, direction and visuals.
So when you're watching a Star Wars movie, you expect, at least, even if the story's lagging, some really excellent visuals. And I think this film does a pretty good job at that, though a bit underwhelming, I have to say. I thought the cinematography was mostly very solid. There weren't any bad shots that were very noticeable, but there wasn't anything that really stood out where I was just like, wow. Maybe there's a couple scenes that were impressive, but just the use of CGI, there is definitely a lot in this film. Just from a pure standpoint, there's not as much actual cinematography because so much of it is composed by CGI, which is still artwork, and I think the CGI is very impressive and is very well integrated into the film. It doesn't feel like too much, and I think that's very, very good. However, I just found that most of it was just kind of dull, and I feel like I've seen it before. There were a couple of very good shots, like that one lightsaber fight scene on that boat in the middle of the ocean where all the waves are going. You guys know what I'm talking about if you've seen the film. That was really thrilling with all the waves crashing over them. Very just stunning to watch. That was probably my favorite visual scene. And that secret cave was really, really cool. I thought visually too. It had a cool look to it. Again, if you've seen the film, you know what I'm talking about. I'm trying not to do any spoilers in this review. But overall, I thought it was okay. I think the fight scenes were definitely good quantity, but the quality was a bit just okay. I thought that main scene, it's surrounded by the waves was really impressive, but the rest of them kind of just blended in with me. For example, I do appreciate there's more than Last Jedi, but I just wish they were more memorable and didn't just all feel kind of repetitive, and that's unfortunate, but at least it's better than Last Jedi in terms of that. And unfortunately, though, there isn't that stunning cinematography that Last Jedi did have as a benefit. So when you put it all together, it's still pretty solid. I'm giving it a 4 out of 5 for direction and visuals.
Now let's delve into some of the acting and character development in this film.
I'm going to try to keep acting and character development pretty brief because it kind of felt pretty brief in the film, to be honest. Acting, basically, was good. There was nothing particularly bad, nothing that particularly amazed me. They all just did a fine job. That's what you expect with these new Star Wars movies, to be honest. They fit their characters well, but I find that these characters, even though they're decently developed and definitely do have multiple dimensions, particularly, of course, the main ones of Rey, Finn, and Poe, they just don't have that same gleam and just extra factor that really made you immersed with Luke, Leia, and Han. And it's not just because of nostalgia there. Those are just a lot better characters, and it's unfortunate because these new actors are arguably better than those three. But it's just these characters aren't written as well, and it suffers a little bit. And that's not this film's fault. This film had a lot to live up to. I'll talk about that later. But yeah, the first two films of this trilogy have made it very hard for Rise of Skywalker to just because they can't really do too much character development for the main characters this late. They do a pretty decent job with Rey. I will say I thought that she did have a decent arc, although it did feel a little artificial at times, and it was definitely a direction. But this is going to be a spoiler here because it has to be, so spoiler bar is up. When it goes away, that means the spoiler is done. So basically, we all know about that thing where Rey's parents are nobodies, as we learned from The Last Jedi. And everyone was upset with that, but honestly, even though I wasn't a big fan of Last Jedi for other reasons, I didn't mind that at all. I thought that was kind of cool and very different. And then, of course, they reverse it in this film. And they do so in the most not-so-subtle way. That planet with that big dance and the big festival, and then that little boy comes up to Rey and then asks her about what her surname is. That was so just inserted. I'll talk more about the script later, but that's what kind of kept on happening where it felt a little bit manipulative and inserted with Rey's identity. And then when they got to the big reveal, oh my god, she's the granddaughter of Palpatine. Yeah, I'd heard about that online and stuff, long before. This has been rumored for months, and just was unsurprising and just not convincing. I didn't really like it, to be honest. I think the twist is kind of lame, in my opinion. There weren't even any big shocks and gasps from the theaters, so that shows you something, especially when it's opening night. And for what the twist was, I think they did a decent job with her reaction and her really coming into her own and avoiding the dark side. I don't like the lineage part and the twist part, but the part about Rey just kind of avoiding the dark side and staying towards the light, I thought there was some good tension there in her relationship with Kylo that was continued from Last Jedi, one of the few well-continued parts from Last Jedi. I thought that was well done. So there's some parts of Rey's arc that are good, but others that are kind of weak, and then it leads to that last moment of the film where everyone in the theater was like, yo, she's a Palpatine, she's not Skywalker. Yep. And then she got posthumously adopted, apparently, and she's Skywalker, even though, like, that's kind of awkward because, like, her parents were still good people, like, they're Palpatines, but that's besides the point. That it was an okay arc. I mean, there's some good parts, there's some bad parts. Spoilers over. So basically what I was saying was that Rey's arc had some positives and definitely some negatives too. But with Poe and Finn, I think they do a decent job with them. I thought Poe definitely had the most development of the 3 new films. I still wish he got more because Oscar Isaac is a great actor and he's underutilized completely. Finn was okay and this still didn't live up to what was developed in The Last Jedi, which is unfortunate. There was a cool dynamic between him and the new group of characters on that planet with the big waves that I talked about earlier. That I thought was kind of cool. But that leads to my problem with this film, is how they introduce these new characters. They try to cram so much in here, and they should have taken a play from Endgame, and now Endgame didn't introduce a single new character, but this tries to, so you get these new characters that are really poorly developed and underutilized. I mean, phenomenal actors like Richard E. Grant and Kerry Russell are just not put to good use, and they're barely in the film. There's like one-note, undeveloped characters, which is really annoying, and like, they just feel purely like plot devices when they have no development and no like realistic aspects to them, and that was really unfortunate. It's like, how about you just spend that time and focus on the main characters and think of a better way to deal with the plot? I mean, I'll talk about that later with the plot, but it was just unfortunate because I thought it distracted from the main characters. And then like Leia, I thought she was kind of anticlimactic, like her arc in this. There's a lot of anticlimactic moments in this film, and bring back like some old characters like Force Ghost and stuff, that was okay. Sometimes it felt a little like just cheesy and not in the best spots. But overall, the acting and character development, I mean, the acting was fine, and the character development was definitely a give and take. I'm going to give it a 3 out of 5 for this category.
Finally, it's time for my most important category, the story elements of plot, pacing, script, and theme.
I'm going to start with the plot, and not too good. So I think it's best to say that Disney and J.J. Abrams were put in a really rough spot with The Rise of Skywalker, but then again, they kind of put themselves in it, because Force Awakens didn't really do too much, and like showing the new trilogy, and it was so similar to New Hope, but it was like, okay, you know what, there's definitely room to expand. And then Disney like thought the thing like, well, we'll have these 3 different filmmakers for the 3 different films, and Rian Johnson just kind of completely screwed them up. But it felt like Rian Johnson didn't completely get to make a Rian Johnson movie because Disney was like holding him back with some humor that just didn't fit, and other things that were just like awkward fan service. So you get this kind of awkward movie that doesn't do anything or advance the plot of a trilogy, and it's not even a terrible movie. It's just, for a Star Wars movie, especially the middle one in the sequel trilogy, didn't do a good job at all. And then, of course, Colin Trevorrow got fired from Rise of Skywalker, so they brought in J.J. Abrams to make that crowd pleaser that's like Force Awakens, or, you know, just something that's kind of white bread, but good enough, you know, because Star Wars is unfortunately failing brand at this point, and it's really sad to say. So what they do, he just kind of put everything in. He's like, let's make a fan service movie, but I'm not going to do a complete remake of Return of the Jedi, even though we're definitely going to include some big moments of there. If you've seen the film, you know what I'm talking about, that there is so much just like parallels between the two. It's kind of unfortunate how much of the just similarities there is to Return of the Jedi. Even the title, for Christ's sake, Return of the Jedi, Rise of Skywalker. Like, are you kidding me? Can you just be a little bit more original? But that's besides the point. So basically, like, instead of like just taking a clear direction and saying, you know what, we might alienate some people, but we're going to make a good film. They're like, yeah, we're going to put everything in. We're going to put in some of the fan service, like I mentioned before, and then we're also going to put in some twists and like some other stuff that maybe will be a little different and surprising. So instead of just getting a pure fan service, like, okay, film that's, you know, succinct and solid enough with Force Awakens, you get this just globbered mess that just, it's hard to digest, and it's a movie that I definitely want to see again, because I will say it is entertaining. Not always for good reason, though. And with the plot, yeah, there's a lot of similarities with Return of the Jedi, and it feels like it takes away a lot from just, like, other films. Like, I mean, just from the start of the movie, the opening scroll, I was all excited, and then it was just so bland. It was just like, okay, yeah, we know that already. It didn't really give anything new. And the first scene, it's like a generic Kylo Ren killing a bunch of like random aliens, and I was like, wasn't this like the first scene of Force Awakens? And then he gets this like big stone that's important. I'm like, we literally just had Infinity War and Endgame. Like, are you really going to deal with important space stones now? I don't think that's like the right move. And it's just like,
continue to get more and more derivative from there. It set the rough tone, and I think that's unfortunate with the plot. And then basically I found that they just kind of rely a lot on like similarities between the previous two movies in this trilogy itself in terms of just like the plot structure, how like the journey. I know like every movie is kind of a journey, but like with like the getting the important objects, deciphering a code, like each little thing a step along the way, it just felt like the same thing over and over again. Maybe it's just because Star Wars shouldn't have been 9 films, but even though the prequel trilogy was a mess, it felt like it offered something new and wasn't too much retreading. But this, as the 9th film in the Star Wars series, just felt like the most uninspired of them all. And just touching again on the romance, there was just these weird romances here, and that's what kind of felt like it kind of perpetrated like the entire trilogy, and how they're like, yeah, I feel like we need a romance, but like doesn't really fit the plot, so we're just gonna like slowly put in a bunch of things where these characters are into each other, but it doesn't fit, so you're just left with this like muddled mess of romance. And that's kind of just what it felt like. It's like they didn't know what to do. They didn't have clear direction. And J.J. Abrams, he's made some great films. The first 2 Star Treks I'm a big fan of, Mission Impossible 3, but with these Star Wars films, he just feels like he's kind of Disney's pawn, just kind of going around. It just doesn't work for me. I wish there was just some clear, like, filmmaking. Like, I mean, come on, Duke Taika Waititi coming in for Thor Ragnarok. Because, guess what? People don't really like the first 2 movies of the sequel trilogy in Star Wars that much, and it's kind of comparable to Thor films, the first 2. And, you know what? Just give some clear direction. But no, they don't have that. And it suffers with the script, too, because the writing is just very weak. The melodrama just doesn't work like it did in the previous films, and there was very few like profound statements. The characters, that definitely weakened their characterization, and it didn't really feel like you got clear emphasis on like who they were in this film, just based on the script being kind of weak and just generic and often predictable too, just like with lots of plot moments throughout. I just felt like I was knowing what was going to happen, even when it was a twist. And when there were twists, it was lame. There's a lot of anticlimactic moments. The worst part about the script, though, I would say, is that some of the drama was just so bad that I was like laughing at it. Like, this movie is very memeable and kind of unintentionally funny at times, and my theater, maybe they were just a mean bunch, but they laughed at some big death scenes, this big romance scene towards the end of the film, and it was just not what Disney and Star Wars were going for. It was kind of upsetting. I wasn't laughing because like I didn't think it was that terrible, but it was definitely awkward. It's just sad to see such a strong and influential series going off on such a weak note. I mean, the main Skywalker saga, that is. There is a positive with the script, and this is the biggest positive of the film for me, actually. Something that's very surprising, because of Last Jedi's weak humor that didn't fit at all. This movie has amazing humor. Maybe it was just me and the people I saw it with, but we were all loving it. There's some really clever jokes in there. Of course, there are some like lame ones that are like for little kids and stuff, but most of the jokes are like mature enough and very thought out. Like, I was like, did they just spend all their time on the humor? Because that was the most inspired part about this movie. And even though like it doesn't really fit with the rest of the Star Wars films, you know, it would make this film better if they low-key just made this like a pure like action comedy. I'd be like a Jumanji film. I'd be like, okay, this is cool. This is a cool movie. But then they try to bring it back to drama each time, and it's like, you can't keep a dramatic tone when you have this humor that's really good and distracting from the drama. That kind of sucks. It's unfortunate, and you know that's the case. And with the pacing, I do have to say that it was not bad at all. The movie, even though it was 2 hours and 15 minutes, it didn't feel too much longer than that. It didn't feel much shorter. It just felt fine. And I thought the transitions between scenes were pretty solid. There were some like slide transitions, which I thought was kind of funny. Again, like, okay, interesting choice. I mean, I didn't hate it, but I just thought it was kind of ridiculous. And maybe took you out of the film a little bit, but the pacing was fine. I thought the editing was very solid. And then the themes. So this is something that the film is just, I mean, this isn't the big part about Star Wars films, but the themes here are basically, the main one is, of course, the identity, and with the Rey's thing about, you know, who she is as a person. What I talked about in the spoiler section of this review, I'm not going to talk about it again, but like I mentioned there, the arc is handled in some ways very good with dealing with the light and the dark, but dealing with lineage and stuff, it was kind of weak. And yeah, there are some decent identity themes, but I just didn't feel like it had like a big impact. The one thing, though, I will say that was the strongest part about this film, even though there were a bunch of people that clapped during different parts of the film, biggest clappable moment was, this is a spoiler again, so spoiler bars up, was when all those ships, like from all the different planets, come together, and you see this massive shot of this like motley crew of spaceships all coming to defeat the First Order, and that was just wow.
that just left me just stunned. I was like, this is the magic of Star Wars right there. It was one of the few glimmers of that in the film. Another was Han Solo's, like the conversation with his son Kylo Ren on that, on that same planet with all the waves and stuff. And basically going back to that, all the ships, I thought that was a really nice theme about just, we can all be together. There's just some unity against the Empire. They're making us feel like it's just us, but there's more people out there. And there's this great unity that felt like very timely. And I wish that more of the movie focused on that instead of Rey's like identity. That was kind of just lame and stuff. And that was definitely just a moment I was just left stunned. And there's some cool battles at the end there, but they didn't focus on that enough. End of spoiler. And so basically I talked about the themes a bit. And one final thing I want to say is because this is, the last Star Wars film, how did it end off? And basically, without doing any spoilers, it did not end off well. I mean, what are they going to do for the last scene? I'm going to tell you a funny anecdote about when I was watching the film. So the last scene, I'm not going to say where it takes place, but they first show the sky, and it kind of reminded me of Earth's sky, so I was like, oh my gosh, what if it's going to end on Earth and it's going to be like, oh, all these people are just Neanderthals because, it's like a long time ago. And I was thinking, oh, what if they make a joke and they're like, oh, this planet doesn't have much force, but it's like, like trying to tie into Earth. I thought that'd be kind of cool, even though, like, it probably wouldn't fit. I was just thinking, just do something kind of crazy because this film has a lot of weird moments that are just kind of awkward and weird, like, and not just, like, don't fit with the film, but at least have something that's kind of just leaves you, like, stunned and, like, wow, you think about it for a little bit and leaves, you leave the theater with a cool impression. And then they just revealed, like, some okay shots and stuff, and it was just like Rey, and she does some things that are a little confusing. If you know what I'm talking about with the little bearing thing, that didn't really make sense because this was important stuff. And then how she has that like new lightsaber that's like all yellow. Sorry if I spoiled it, but it's really not a big deal. I don't even know where she got it. There was a bunch of weird continuing things in this film, and definitely a lot of plot holes, but like it felt like some stuff was definitely left on the editing room floor and just didn't make sense like plot wise. And the worst part, maybe, was how she slides down that hill. She literally, like, gets a sled, and she sleds. In the last scene, there's, like, this big, reverent scene, and she sleds. Like, she's, like, sleigh riding. Yeah, it was so weird. And that's just how the movie kind of sums it up for me. The last scene shows that, like, this film is just an awkward mix of, like, nostalgia with trying to do new things and just being weird and experimental. And, yeah, so clearly, I'm not too happy with this plot, pacing, script, and theme category. Story elements, I'm going to be nice and give it a 2 out of 5, which, yeah, that doesn't sound nice, but trust me, I could have been a lot harsher. And at least my overall score, like I mentioned in the last scene, is just a weak way for the Star Wars films to go off. Yeah, they end with that nice nostalgic shot, but they didn't do anything that bold, and the few bold things they did were these weird, like, little side conversations sliding in there that really didn't amount to anything, didn't make sense. So, yeah, the movie's kind of fun to laugh at, it's entertaining, and the jokes are actually really good when they're actually being intentional. So, yeah, it's sad. This is definitely one of the weaker Star Wars films, and probably the worst of the new trilogy, even though it felt more of like a Star Wars film than Last Jedi did. Overall, I'll be giving this, drum roll please, a 2.5 out of 5. So, that's right in the middle, mediocre film. So, is it a thumbs up or a thumbs down? I'm being nice and give it a thumbs up. Overall, if I'm entertained by a film, I gotta give it the thumbs up, unless it's like The Room and it's straight just terrible and I'm just laughing at it the entire time. This movie's okay. It has a lot of good parts. It has a lot of bad parts. They just even out into a muddled mess. It's meh. And that's sad. I wish they did something bolder, but at least it's something to talk about. And it's unfortunate Star Wars has come to this. Hopefully whatever trilogies they do in the future are better. I hope you enjoyed this review. Make sure to go check out the film because it is a big event. Tell me what you guys think in the comment section down below. Like and subscribe for more awesome movie reviews, rankings, year-end videos coming soon, award season coverage. It's going to be great. So thank you for watching this Film Frenzy. Signing off. Goodbye.